we've been speaking about awareness, presence, mindfulness, and why the brain likes to be busy, what happens when it's not busy, and and various aspects of presence and how it can really help us. There could be a question that, for some of us, if our minds are particularly busy or our routines are particularly busy, how do we, in practical life, create presence? And for that, how can we make space throughout the day so that we can we can practice without it feeling like a task to do? So yeah, I mean, there's one practice which, say you're on your mat and you're sitting on your mat for 10 minutes, but presence is actually, in some ways, it's what you carry through your day. So for that, how do we create more space in life? So, I'd just like to again start with short practice. So, for that, if you could sit comfortably, close your eyes. And thinking about perhaps, a time when you spent, say, 15 minutes doing nothing, not watching anything, not sleeping, not talking, not reading. And we've, come to perhaps realize or think about that we don't have empty time usually in our days, because every moment it feels like, it becomes an opportunity to fill it with something. And if nothing else, we always have the phone. Um, so we could have, given up this this thing of doing nothing, because that feels like there's so much to do. So these empty moments are now fewer and fewer in our lives. And when perhaps the structure of life was different, we had pauses built into life. So say we had to walk a lot, um, and um, and so it was easier to be there with the activity. There was also waiting, which we now don't really have. So waiting was a time when pause was built into it. Looking out the window, say, or sitting under a tree. But now every gap is filled. So the brain can never really get a chance to process one experience before we have another one, coming at it. So, so, so there is, in some ways, um, a forgetting of boredom. So if we can sit just perhaps for a couple of minutes at this time without doing anything, just sitting with ourselves. Not feeling like there's anywhere to go or anything to do. Being present with yourself. One more minute. And then slowly returning to your breath, setting an intention for your time here today, and then slowly opening your eyes. We were talking about boredom, and we started treating boredom, like it's our biggest enemy. So kids often say, I'm bored, and then parents immediately solve it. Our phones solve loneliness, boredom for us. The television solves boredom for us. Now, how the brain works is that when the brain is not consuming, it starts connecting. So, by this, it means that, when we are not taking in more, say, information, taking in more data for the brain to worry about or treat urgently, creative insights can emerge during this time, when the brain is free from consuming. So, say, periods like when we walk, when we are showering, when we are washing dishes, perhaps when we are gardening, driving. Because when we are doing these activities, the brain doesn't really have to invest, a lot of its energy. So it now has space, it now has the capacity to um, sometimes connect the dots, throw up new ideas. So these activities again, like showers, walks, when we are doing something routine like washing dishes, gardening, or driving, brain has room now. And that's when sometimes the best ideas usually arrive there in the morning when we wake up. Um, they don't really arrive when we are answering emails or on our phones, because often when we are doing nothing, it opens actually the doorway into our creativity. So doing nothing has benefits for you know the kind of ideas that come with us. Now, just to be aware that there's a difference between passive boredom, which means that sometimes we're just scrolling on the phone, and nothing is really interesting, so we are bored. That's passive boredom. And the other is generative boredom, which is the boredom we're talking about, where we allow the mind enough quiet to reorganize itself. And it's helpful, to be aware of the difference between the two, because we could be confused. Yeah, I could be bored watching TV, but that's not the same, because the brain is again um, being used to collect more data. Now, um, the the brain works in a way, we could expect it to operate continuously, but like anything else, it needs to pause, it needs to recover. So it needs, that period of silence, a period of quiet, so that it can recover and regenerate with all that it's been doing about. Now, the other difference to know is the difference between worry and reflection. So we could think that we are thinking, but often we are looping. Now, how do we make out the difference between, say, worry and reflection? Because if we are thinking, our thought could be going in either direction. So when we start worrying, we are asking, what if? And this question of what if, what if, what if, it circles. Now, what if could be an imaginary conversation, it could be a scenario, it can be a circumstance, whatever it is. But the moment we go into what if thinking, that's worry, and it repeats, it's circling in the brain. Now, all it does is that worry is actually not creating any clarity for us, it simply creates anxiety. On the other hand, when we are reflecting on something, we are usually asking ourselves, what happened, what did I learn, what matters now, what should be the next good step. So with reflection, we are processing, a situation or an incident. We're making sense of it. We're trying to see maybe if we could have done it differently. There's something we learned from it. And then also, what can I do now, depending on what matters to me, or what's the next wise step? So there is some movement in reflection. It's not spinning like worry spins. So so then, when you are thinking or when you are spending time with yourself, you're being aware of this difference so that we don't actually go into loops of thinking. Now, how do we practice this in daily life? Because we cannot possibly, maybe for some of us, attend, say, an hour long session every day of meditation. So, and also, it's it's a practice that should last us through the day, because presence is something that, in our waking hours, it keeps us in the moment. So we need moments of returning actually to the practice. And therefore, this is there's a concept of micro pausing. You could just 3 times a day, 1 minute, morning, afternoon, evening, simply pause and ask yourself, where is my mind? What is my body say telling me? How am I feeling? Is there anything I need? Um, really checking in, do I need to do anything in the next hour? And when we pause, these tiny pauses can break, they can interrupt our autopilot. So, so at times, we could be going through the day without really being mindful of what we are doing, where we are going. So when we take even a minute long pause 3 times a day, it just helps us align ourselves to, how we are feeling and also what we are intending to do in the day. Now, another practice is called, it's a tool that that you can use. It's called the STOP practice. And STOP is actually an acronym. S is for stop, so you pause for a moment. T is for taking one conscious breath. So you don't have to spend too much time, just one deep, slow breath. Then O is for observe. So observe what's happening in your thoughts, your emotions, your body, what's happening in your surroundings. And then P, proceed. And then choose your next action intentionally. So taking away from the reactivity of from us of the day, and this stop technique can really help us, come back to the moment, come back to ourselves. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk about as a practice is that mindfulness or presence can also really help us in conversations. So, say when we are entering an important conversation, or there's something that needs more mindful talking, we need to be more considered. Before we enter that conversation, we can pause and just take 3 deep breaths and ask yourself, can I pause before I respond? And practicing that. So even while, say, you're having a conversation, staying away from, preparing your reply when the other person is talking, really listening to them, not interrupting them, then, consciously not only listening for what you disagree with, and drifting into your own stories rather than listening to them. So, so practicing that in a conversation, and maybe also during the conversation, checking in, am I still here? And if you find that you were not there, you can just bring yourself back. So, um, so this is something, as a practice, as a mindfulness technique, we can use while we are having conversations. Now, we've spoken about this before in the past as well, that even, when, say, emotions arise or when our attention narrows down, before we react to something, we can just pause, notice, breathe, and then return. So, so it's just in a way reinforcing the value, the importance of pausing, of checking in and aligning ourselves through the day with whatever it is that we are doing or we intend to do. Now, we'll just do a short integration practice that you can also, practice as a check-in for maybe um, three to four times a day. And for that, again, I invite you to close your eyes, sit straight. And then asking yourself, where is my attention? Where is my attention? What am I feeling right now? What am I feeling right now? Is there anything I need right now? Is there anything I need right now? And what is the wisest next step? What is the wisest next step? And again, bringing your awareness back to your body and then opening your eyes now. There are some daily practices that we can incorporate that are easy to follow and they really help with presence. So, one is the 1 minute check in that we spoke about, so three times a day, morning, afternoon, night, and just asking, where is my mind? Um, how am I feeling? If I need anything, what's my next step? Now, the other thing that you can do as a practice is 5 minutes of nothing. So every day, no phone, no book, no podcast, no music, just sitting or walking or looking out of the window. And you can just, in that time, relax, allow your mind to really settle and not feel like, it needs to keep feeding itself more input. So, doing that as a practice, 5 minutes of just sitting with yourself or walking and letting the mind just settle on that time. The third practice is something called the transition pause. So before you are entering a new environment or a new situation, so say before you're entering your home, a meeting, you're going for a dinner, it's an important conversation, you can take just one conscious breath and ask yourself, how do I want to show up? How do I want to show up? The other things that we can do without, either listening to music or podcasts, without planning. One is while we shower, so not having anything, just, experiencing the water. And the second thing is walking. So at least, once a week, if you can. If on the other days you feel like you want to listen to something, music is something you enjoy running to, into. So, say one walk each week, no headphones, no phone, no planning, just walking and observing things around you, noticing colors, smells, sounds, and allowing your nervous system to breathe, to relax. So yeah, that was all I wanted to share today. If you have any questions, you can share them. Else, we'll be back tomorrow and we'll be continuing with how to be present and how
Hi,
can we create
hi.
balance in daily life.
I
Hi,
just
Radhika.
have a, I just have a statement. So I was
Yeah.
just thinking about, um, even when you said walking, running, not do anything,
Hmm.
they also say for eye health, for your
Yeah.
eyes, you look far away and then you look close at the nature, things in nature, like far away at the sky and then close. Also, that
Yeah.
helps. I'm
Hmm.
trying to practice that. So amazing. Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
for
Thanks for
taking
sharing
time.
that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, even when we are walking, say through a garden or walking, we also tend to use more horizontal vision. And because we have to make sense of the width around us, and that's also said to have been very
Yep.
helpful
Yep.
even with processing our emotions and calming the nervous system. So yeah, walking has huge benefits. Looking, anything that the senses can use um, as an anchor, say, can be really helpful for us. So thanks for bringing that point, and thank you for listening, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow, and we'll continue on how we can be here now.